Welcome everybody to the Kim Barrett Show. I am your host, Kim Barrett, and on today's episode, we interview the one and only Mr. James Tuckerman. Now, James Tuckerman has a history of a tremendous amount of different avenues. He's been down from digital magazines to print magazines to now running B2B school. So James is someone that I've known for many years, and I actually entered many of his Anthill online competitions, and they've had like the 30 under 30, 40 under 40 Cool Company Awards, and entered in and managed to win a couple of those as well. So he's a great guy, and he's going to be talking to us all around B2B marketing. Because if you're someone who's going through and going, well, look, I sell huge drill bits, $250,000 a pop to mining companies. How can I use social media to actually leverage, have a conversation, and make those sales? And this is what James is a specialist at. So he's a specialist at going, cool, what platform should we use? How do we use it? And how do we get those people in? So whether it's drill bits, law clerks, it's something completely different, and you go, I don't think I could find those on Facebook or Instagram, James is the guy for you. So we're going to cover off on, number one, a bit of his history and the meaning around the word entrepreneur in Australia. He's going to cover off on how can you leverage B2B, and then he's also going to throw me under the bus with a tough question at the end there as well around the 4 key buying decisions people make when it comes to online marketing. So if you haven't heard, he's also a speaker at our Certified Ballers Live event coming up in February 29th and March 1st, and you can check out tickets there at www.certifiedballerslive.com.au, and we're going to talk about everything he's going to be covering there as well. So before anything, without further ado, let's jump into the show and chat to James Tuckerman. Guys, I am joined today by the one and only Mr. James Tuckerman. Sir, thank you so much for making the time to catch up with us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. So give us a little bit, obviously we've already introduced you a little bit to our audience, but give us a little bit of the headline, because you've had a pretty interesting past where you've gone through and done a whole range of different things. Give us some of the highlight reel of some of the stuff you've been involved in and where it's led you up to today.
Yeah, well, I started my own entrepreneurial journey as a young magazine publisher. Remember those things made of paper and ink? So I started one of them when I was 26 years of age, and it's called Anthill magazine. Still exists in a digital form. But so about 26 years of age, launched a print magazine called Anthill magazine. Some of the older people listening to this might remember that. And it grew to be one of Australia's top 3 largest business magazines, which is pretty wild, since it was launched using credit cards and personal savings, very small personal savings. It was launched from the spare bedroom of my parents' suburban home. And that was about innovation, entrepreneurship, and startup culture. And that kept me busy for about 5 years. Then, of course, 2008 was the GFC, and Steve Jobs launched the first tablet, and AdWords started to become popular. And it was the perfect storm for magazines, and the bottom fell out of the market, and we had to close the print. We went 100% digital, and surprisingly, over the next 12 months, we crushed it, and no one expected it, including me. We had about $900 left, and we spent $600 on a WordPress blog. And within about 10 months, we were beating some of the business sections of some of the major newspapers in Australia, including your major newspaper in Perth and in Western Australia. And everyone wanted to know how we did it. So they wanted to know how we made this digital transformation successful. We ran a couple of workshops. As we began to run more workshops, we discovered that we could run a training business. The media company went from Anthill magazine to the Anthill Academy, and then a couple permutations later, it's now called B2B School, and it's a global online training academy for B2B business owners, so that they can get more leads, meetings, clients, sales and marketing, online community. That's what it's really about.
Yeah. I love it. So it's pretty good. A couple questions on that. When you said, obviously, the GFC tablet coming out, do you reckon that when obviously you guys transitioned, Do you think that you were probably a little bit ahead of the curve with everyone else, where they were like, you were like, no, this is actually like, print is dying and we need to jump. Obviously, there's some people still kind of clutching at the print straws, if you will. What was it that indicated to you that you needed to make that shift?
Well, there's a saying in magazine publishing: if you want to make a small fortune in magazine publishing, start with a big one. Right? Because it costs so much to produce a magazine. So it was a decision that was entirely made out of necessity, because every print magazine is going to cost minimum, even a niche magazine is going to cost somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000 just to get out one magazine.
Wow.
And if you don't have the advertising revenue to back it, which is where all the money comes from, the decision becomes very, very clear, which is why even when magazines were popular, the mortality rate for magazines was extremely high. Most magazines would die within like 6 to 18 months, mainly because the enthusiastic publisher would just run out of money. So early 2009, we just basically mapped it out, and we basically went, if we have 2 more editions, like the last 2 editions, we're gonna be in serious trouble. So the decision was kind of made for us. I mean, but at the same time, it was considered heresy. It was so radical at the time. We copped these magazine headlines, like really negative newspaper headlines and other things, like Anthill magazine bites the dust, and Anthill magazine latest victim of the financial crisis. And it was like really full on. But the only, like all the industry were calling us insane. And, but our readers were basically really supportive. We wrote this long letter and we explained what we were doing. And our readers came back and they just went, bring it. And they loved the idea. But interestingly, there was a fairly outspoken journalist at the time that wrote a couple pieces that were really negative. And that person went on to one of the major competitors in Australia. And then 10 years later, that major competitor shut down the print arm of their business finally.
Oh, wow.
And this journalist wrote this big publisher's note at the beginning of the last print edition, which was almost word for word what we had sent in our letter 10 years ago.
I love it.
It took the major competitor 10 years to finally figure out what we'd figured out 10 years ago. And the reason was that they just had deeper pockets.
Yeah. So they could just weather the storm a little bit longer, even though they were going towards the same fate.
Yeah. And there will be magazines, for the people who love their magazines, there will be magazines out there for a long time to come, in the same way that when I said to my parents, we're shutting down the magazine, and the same's going to happen with newspapers, my mum said, I do love reading my newspaper. And I said, I remember your mother saying, I'm miswriting my pony to work. Right, to the city from Doncaster, right? Which is out a suburb of Melbourne, Victoria, where I live. People still ride ponies and they still ride horses, but it's for a different purpose. It's for a different context. It's for a different use. And now, just like everyone who's going to be speaking at Certified Ballers, my focus is now all digital, because as Warren Buffett once said, about 10 years ago, he said this, and it was very inspiring for me. But he said, if someone came to me today and said, I've got this great business model, what we're going to do is we're going to cut down a whole bunch of trees. Then we're going to pulp them, and then we're going to cover them with ink, which is made out of chemicals, which has been drawn from the ground or synthesized. And then we're going to get a whole bunch of trucks, and we're going to get a whole bunch of vans, and we're going to deliver it to people's houses using fossil fuels to give them yesterday's news. I would turn around and say that is the dumbest business model I have ever heard.
It's so true. So true.
Yeah. Whereas when we do stuff, we're launching businesses overnight. Like, when was the last product launch that you ran and you just went, oh, you know what? I've got an idea. And then like somewhere between, 48 hours and 44 days later, it was in the world.
Yeah, and like I do that all the time now. It's like from speed to market for testing for us, it's like we want to do it so quickly, and we'll roll things out and we'll roll an idea, and it's like cool. Like the other day, I filmed a new ad. It was like a science experiment, and I had the idea on Saturday, went and bought the stuff I needed from Bunnings on Sunday, recorded it on Monday, and it's live today. So it's all about that speed.
Yeah. And you can see like behind me, like at the moment, this is my office. But however, this is the bit of my office that looks like my home office, but it's actually my real office. And then if I tilted the camera around, you'd see, for example, like all sorts of recording
studio,
over there. I've got a second monitor. I've got my Insta cut out. Hey, so I can, we can just do things really, really quickly now.
Yeah, and so with what's happening with Anthill Online is that you said there's still a bit of stuff that you do there. Is that, and you've obviously got B2B school. Is there much happening over there, or what's? Because I know that you also had like a slew of awards you guys do and all that sort of stuff there. Still, what's happening with it at the moment?
Yeah, so it still runs. I'm like Anthill magazine. It's really funny because when it was a magazine, it was called Australian Anthill. Then when we went online, everybody began to call it Anthill Magazine because they needed a way to define it and they couldn't quite define it. The URL for that is anthillonline.com, and it's just still been running for about 15 years. It largely self-manages itself. It's about innovation, entrepreneurship, startup culture, that sort of stuff. As any business owner, I look at it and I know that it needs a bit of a facelift. It's not getting as much love as it used to because my attention is elsewhere, but it's got massive goodwill and great traffic, and that was my contribution to the culture of Australia because I wanted to make Australians that little bit more entrepreneurial. And 15 years ago we couldn't even use that word entrepreneur in the magazine because it still held a ton of negative connotations. But we were dedicated to the commercialization of Australian innovation or something suitably wanky. But anyway, but then about it took about 5 years before we could use the word entrepreneur.
What was the negative connotation you think was attached? Because it's interesting now that like it becomes a super buzzword. Like, what was the negative connotation there?
You're from Western Australia, so you would have heard of a character called Alan Bond.
Yeah.
In the rest of Australia, Christopher Skase, a whole bunch of other people were these entrepreneurs from the 1980s and the 1990s, and most of them were really property barons building these houses of cards, but they were self-defined entrepreneurs, and the word got a bad name. But but then it was probably about 2000 with the dot-com boom and bust, where a bunch of people began to realize that they could start these new ventures. The startup culture began to take off, but still in Australia, you'd say to someone, "Oh, I want to start my own business," and they'd go, "Pull your head in, son."
Yeah.
There's a great job as a systems technician down at Honeywell. Go get that.
Yeah.
And that really bothers me because then Australia becomes this branch economy where all we are is where these head offices for larger international global companies. And I went to a private school, and I'm ashamed to say that a lot of my private school friends have just really ended up being middle managers within large international companies. And they're earning good money and living in nice suburbs, but they're not contributing to the Australian economy other than in the taxes that they pay on their income.
Yeah.
Whereas, you, Kim, you went and created your own business. You employ people. You teach other people how to grow their own businesses. They become more prosperous. They become Australian businesses. Both of our businesses are global, even though, the Certified Ballers event is coming up in Perth, in Australia. Global businesses generating income from people all over the globe. That's what I wanted, and I'm more than happy for the mining industry and other traditional primary industries to continue to generate income and revenue and export dollars for the Australian economy. But I would love to see more of that money be filtered back into businesses that are going to rely on intellectual property.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And it's funny though with the word entrepreneur now, because I think because it has become a bit more mainstream as well, and there's a lot of people using it, then sometimes I hear it and then it's like, oh, when someone says that they're an entrepreneur, I'm like, are you an entrepreneur? Or like, do you sell network marketing stuff at the back of your car and you think that's what entrepreneur? Like, it's always so interesting because the words kind of go through shifts, right? Because now it's like, I'm like, oh, should I say?
In Australia, it's unlikely that you would call yourself an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
thing. I was on a plane flight and I'm sitting between a lawyer and a young American backpacker. So we're making small talk, and the lawyer, woman in her 30s, says what she does. And we go, "You're a lawyer." The young backpacker talks about what he's studying, what he's doing, and then they say, "What do you do?" And I go, "Oh, I started a magazine, and then I'm now running this educational business. I invest in these other startups." I've got involved in a business called Ninjoto recently, an amazing CRM. Go check it out. As a passionate shareholder, and and all these different things, and then the young American goes, "Oh, so you're an entrepreneur?" And that was the first time that I'd ever actually probably even considered myself to be an entrepreneur, despite actually probably 5 years earlier, maybe 8 years earlier at that point, having launched what was at the time probably Australia's first and truest entrepreneurship innovation startup magazine.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? It was because so what would you I don't like to put labels on things, but how would you categorize yourself then? Like if you were to go put yourself into a category, James Tuckerman, what category would you be in?
That's a tough one, isn't it? When I talk to people at a school barbecue or something, I just say small business owner, and it usually just lets me off the hook. Yeah. I used to have I had a really fun time for about 5 years where I'd say I'm a professional blogger.
Yeah.
And that was the 5 years after we went from print to digital. And that was great because I just watched people go, "What? You're making money from blogging?" And the truth was we had a WordPress blog that we transitioned the media company over to. And our experience was that there was about a year and a half, 2 years where it was living hell. And then there was about 3 years where the money just poured in because we had this online site. And people were still paying the same amount of money that they'd pay for advertising dollars. So they're used to paying this amount of money for advertising dollars, then they're paying it in a digital context, but we didn't have the same overheads. And at that time, I'd just say, "I'm a professional blogger." And they'd go, "What do you mean?" I go, "I've got a blog. We run articles, guest posts." And then I'd be sitting at the pointy end of the plane or whatever, and they're thinking, "How is this possible?"
I love it, and I think it's the same. I think a lot of, especially in Australia, where I think overseas the term is heavily used, and people love saying this. They're an entrepreneur, and we're over here. So we're a business owner. That's kind of what we do. Which I can't say one's right or wrong, but it's always interesting to see how people talk about it.
Well, I now often say trainer. And people say, "What do you do?" And I say, I run a training business." All right, and they kind of get that. So, they might think that I will go to a seminar room, which is not traditionally my model, and I know we will be doing that. And that's lots of fun because you get to see people and talk to people and pick on people, have a really fun time. But most of the time I'm sitting in my office in a regional part of Victoria. Where I can raise my family and walk the kids to school and the other stuff. So I use trainer, but then they and they imagine me in front of a room of 15 people, but really it's more like you're having a webinar with 1,000 people. And just even imagining 1,000 people in a room is very, very difficult. But that is a common thing for someone running a training business that's an international training business in this particular modern digital economy.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. And so tell us a little bit more about the training. So obviously you're coming to join us at Certified Ballers Live, which is going to be epic, and you're going to be talking about a bit of B2B acquisition, a bit of LinkedIn, because I think a lot of people sometimes when they see certain social media things, and even though it's funny, right? I have a business which we do Facebook advertising. So we work with businesses who want to get customers, and we use Facebook advertising to acquire our customers. They're like, "Oh, but are there going to be? Can I get B2B? How would I get B2B clients?" I'm like, "Well, that's what my whole I don't sell Facebook advertising to Pete who's looking at the latest update from Kardashians. I'm not going to make any money doing that." So I think people sometimes get confused when it comes to the social platforms. So tell us a little bit more. What are you going to be sharing with us at Certified Ballers Live? Give us kind of a couple of little highlights that what people could expect.
Yeah. Well, I discovered a couple of years back. So as I mentioned, we sort of went down this training path and this training route, and we came up with some good methodologies and some other things. But there was a point probably about 4 or 5 years ago when I realized that most of the training out there were for people who were selling something online. So if you wanted to sell a $9 umbrella or a $17 ebook, there was options. There was tons of options, and there still are tons of options. But what if you want to sell? We had a guy come through one of our training programs, and he sells drill bits. And this is mind games with you because the drill bit wasn't this size, but drill bits for $250,000 per drill bit.
Wow.
Drill bit.
Yeah.
Is that big? For a mining company. And that's a complex sale. So people talk about complex sales. They talk about big ticket sales. That there is an example of a big ticket and a complex sale. Now, in his particular instance, step number one, who's your target audience? And we got to figure out who his target audience was, and we could drill it down to certain like titles within mining companies. And then once we knew those titles and within the mining companies, the logical platform for that particular campaign was LinkedIn. Because the type of people that he was looking for, there might only be 3,000 of those people on the planet, right? So LinkedIn was the logical model. But when it comes down to, when you've got a product where the sale does not happen online, where the sale happens over the phone or face-to-face, maybe there's a booking order or there's a contract that needs to be signed, a different set of models and principles, but more specifically, a different funnel is required. So we have training products that range from $11. And sure, someone pulls out their credit card, tappity, 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 tap. But then we have, we do 2-day strategy days for $12,000. And once someone's not going to pull out a credit card and go tappity, 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 tap. Well, what they will do, so our goal from an online perspective in that situation, and it's very common to B2B, is that the entire sales and marketing strategy will often be therefore about getting a meeting or a Zoom call, or whatever it's going to be. So about 5 years ago, we realized that there was this great neglected majority of people that weren't selling something online. And in the beginning, that could have included mortgage brokers and personal coaches and all the other stuff. Any situation where there usually needs to be a little bit of a face-to-face or get to know you. And then over the last 12 months or so, we went a little bit more focused into B2B. And that's just easier for marketing. We have a saying in our training programs, one person, one problem, one product. So know your person, know their problem, and it's very, very easy then to come up with a product that speaks exactly to them. And that's what we did about a year ago. But in terms of at the event, if you sell a complex product or service or a big ticket product or service, that's the type of stuff that I'll be focusing on. How to use digital sales and marketing strategies to get someone through the journey from a stranger to a suspect to a prospect to a client or customer. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. Because I think that's the big one. And for B2B, one of the big problems I see is they go, I can't digital online. No, it's not for me. I can't do anything with it, And then they just completely disregard. And it's like, well, look, there's aspects that probably aren't right. You're probably not running an Instagram campaign to sell your $250,000 drill bit. For sure, exactly. It's like not doing TikTok videos, dancing around a drill bit, maybe, I don't know, but that's not gonna fly. So you've got to have those other ideas, and that's perfect, and that's why we're really excited to have you along to share that, because we've got a range of people, and it's especially events like these. It's all about opening, yes, there's going to be great content, actionable content, and the benefit as well that everyone has, because a lot of people, they go, so if I go here, am I going to be sold all these products and services? And the benefit of CBL is that there's no sales. There's not going to be a sale behind every speaker where you're like, oh gosh, I've got to listen to this guy, tell his story again, and then he's going to suck me in with his speaking strategies and make me buy stuff. It's all actionable content, but it's also opening people's minds to what's possible. Because if you're listening to this or watching this and you go, I've been thinking about how can I sell my $250,000 drill bit, for an example. Coming along and seeing what James has to say is going to be what actually will show you what's possible on there. Doesn't mean you have to do it.
If it's someone who's selling $3,000 websites and wants to be selling $30,000 websites, or even if it's a private consultant or coach that is working with people in a specific area of expertise, These I've tended to find are a neglected majority. And the other really important thing about going to an event like Certified Ballers is that you can sit there and you can listen to what all the different people are doing and the strategies that they're applying. And you might turn around and you go, you know what, I desperately need some sort of profile raising content strategy. And I'm listening to this person and that's what I need to raise my profile. But then when it comes to some sort of like more aggressive form of outbound, I might, Kim's fantastic at Facebook ads, and that's where I'm going to use to fill my funnel. Someone else might be looking at it and going, you know what, I should probably be following a more organic strategy, and for that reason, I'll be using LinkedIn. Or someone might be sitting in the room going, you know what, I'm spending money on Facebook ads right now, but LinkedIn ads are now beginning to kind of like find their own. You can still get much cheaper leads on Facebook and much greater volume, but LinkedIn is finding its way. And if you want a very specific target audience, I was working with a woman yesterday who wants legal clerks from barristers' chambers. Yeah. Now I'm thinking that was a tiny market, but there were 5,000 of them in Australia on LinkedIn.
Oh, wow.
So, but that wouldn't be a Facebook strategy. But in our biggest month last year, I think we spent about $45,000 on Facebook ads. We're a B2B business. It's called B2B School. We're targeting other business owners.
Yeah. The funny thing is, it's human beings, right? That's like where they're going to be on online somewhere. But I think that's, as you say, it's more. I don't think it's like oh no, those people are only on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. It's more so that what's going to be the fastest path for me to be able to target them and go, cool, how do I find exactly that segment?
And in a way that my brain doesn't go.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like you could really try if you wanted to on Facebook to find those legal clerks, and you could run call out videos and do all this sort of stuff if you really wanted to. However, it's going to take you a long time, probably going to cost you a lot of money, versus going, what's the fastest path to success for me? Follow this instruction on LinkedIn, centimeters wide, kilometers deep, use that for a lead generation strategy, and then you're going to be off to the races.
And the other thing, because you get to hear all these different perspectives and different strategies, you might turn around and go, you know what, I'm going to be using, we have this great set of LinkedIn automation tools that we use. And we've been getting leads on LinkedIn for like $1.20 a lead, meetings booked for like $6, all this other stuff. That comes through a lot of refinement. But, and we're using that. But
so
then,
can I have that, please?
Yeah, sure.
We'll talk after this.
well, Kim came to our audience and he showed our audience it was a meeting grabbing strategy session using ManyChat. Fantastic. But yeah, so we use it. That's an example for LinkedIn. But when they come into our world, and if I give this as the example of that fairly unusual one, the legal clerk, that person then might want to set up a Facebook group to get all those legal clerks on Facebook. And then it would naturally attract other legal clerks to that Facebook group on Facebook and complement the other things that they're doing on LinkedIn. And then hopefully get to a point where that there is basically just attracting people on its own. So we started a B2B group on Facebook called B2B Talk with B2B Pros, which is a bit of a homage to one of the groups that one of my business partners is a member of. And just by giving it that name, B2B Talk with B2B Pros, we've got about 500 group members in about 8 weeks.
Wow.
And we had to put a little bit of effort in. And one of those efforts was inviting connections on LinkedIn to join our Facebook group. Very weird. But now it's kind of getting to that critical mass where people are like being recommended this group because 2 of their connections are members in that. And there's just so many different options, and it really just comes down to picking hopefully the small few that are going to be right for you.
That. So good. Now, I'll wrap us up with the final question. So I love this question. I can't remember. I got asked this on a podcast once, and I've been stealing it ever since. So by all means, everyone, this is not my question, but I love it. So what's one question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Oh, gee. That's No, you've done pretty well. I mean, like we've covered all sorts of different things. I can't think of one question that I would have liked to have been asked, there are many, many ways to get the outcomes that you want when it comes to marketing, sales marketing, digital or otherwise. So many different options, and it can get very, very confusing with all these different options out there. And we can get pulled from one thing to the next thing, to the one thing to the next thing. So one thing that I would say is that if someone if you said, what's the most important thing or something like that, I would actually say knowing the end goal. So for example, one of the questions that I will undoubtedly ask when I get to certified ballers will be, I'll ask everyone for what I call their ultimate online transaction. And it is the ultimate because it's the final step online, and it's a transaction because a transaction can be measured. So if you're listening at home, this is probably worthwhile doing, and you might have different answers, but there are really only 4 ultimate online transactions in any business that I'm aware of, having directly coached hundreds, had thousands go through my training programs, supported hundreds of thousands through the blogs and all the other stuff. There really are only 4 of these ultimate online transactions. Ultimate, it's the end. Online, it's online transaction. It can be measured. Number 1 is an e-commerce sale, and that doesn't require much explanation. Tappity, tappity, tap, I buy something. And I say this because it's so important that you know your ultimate online transaction. If you know that that's your end goal, that will define your strategies, right? So that's one thing. But what if you don't sell anything online like the vast majority of businesses? Well, it might be a consultant or a coach or a web developer or someone selling a $250,000 drill bit. And if that's the case, your ultimate online transaction is something that we call the incoming VIP, the incoming very interested prospect. And you know all about this, Kim, because you teach this, and this is how you help a lot of your clients. And that's when someone's like books a meeting. So they go to Calendly or whatever it is, and they book a time with you. And that's the incoming very interested prospect because they've gone out of their way. And you run ads, don't you, Kim? I've seen ads on Facebook where you basically say, you can book a call with me. You do that, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. That there is the second ultimate online transaction, e-commerce sale, incoming VIP. What if you have a retail business or you sell cafe soy lattes with a sprinkle of cinnamon?
That's not what you order, is it? Please tell me.
And you can't sell that online because it would still be impossible. Although my local guy, you can go online now and buy it and they bring it. But anyway, in most hospitality businesses and also in a bunch of different retail industries as well too, people still, it's not the e-commerce transaction, it's not the incoming VIP. You want someone to come into your store. So the last step online, buying something is the last step online. Booking the meeting is the last step online. And if you're in retail, it's downloading the coupon. So you request the coupon, and that's the last step online, and that brings you in. And once again, I use the word measurable, transaction, ultimate online transaction, because transactions are measurable. And that particular business can measure the number of people who click on the link to go to the coupon page, that download the coupon, that bring it into the store to redeem the coupon. And that way they can say, okay, well, I spent $1,000 on Facebook ads and made $5,000, I'm ahead. Because we measure the transaction. And so that's e-commerce, incoming VIP coupon. And I'm really going to put you on the spot here. Can you guess what the 4th might be? This is really hard. I'd be astonished if you get it because it took me a long time to figure this one out.
What about, I'm going to go with like an online referral?
He's a smart guy, this Kim Barrett. We call it the outgoing click. And that is when someone goes to your website and they click on an ad and they go to somewhere else. That you're making money that way. And that's or it could be an affiliate link within an email. Or it could be like one of those comparison websites, like the Meerkat.
Compare the Meerkat.com.
Yeah, and you go to the site and you click on a link to go check out a credit card, and they make their money. And those 4 are the only ultimate online transactions that exist. In your business, Kim, you probably use at least 3. Probably don't use the coupon in the traditional sense, but you probably have e-commerce sales. You get people to book calls. And you probably have a bit of referral marketing built into your business as well too. Most businesses, what I would say is know what your end goal is, your ultimate online transaction, and that will help you determine what strategies are going to be best for you to get to the end. So at the beginning, who's your target market? Where are they? Because if you can name them, you can find them, you can figure out their headaches. And at the other end of the spectrum, what's your end goal? What do you want them to do? So it's a clerk, and I want them to book a meeting. And then it's just fill the spaces between them with the best strategies that are going to not just be most applicable for your industry and your market, but also the right strategies for you and your comfort zone and your skill set and all the other stuff that goes with it.
That's gold. I'm glad I asked the question to get that last little nugget out of you. That's great.
That's
awesome.
Put me on the spot, and I put you on the spot, and I think it was rewarding for everyone.
Definitely. All right, so guys, all the links to everything that James mentioned, all of his B2B school, his software platform, his Antu Online will be in the show notes. So if you need anything, you can just scroll down and check that out wherever you're watching or listening. And of course, make sure you get a ticket and come and join us at Certified Ballers Live. That's www.certifiedballerslive.com.au. James and a whole slew of other amazing people are coming in. And especially if you're in Perth, you have no excuse. But even if you're in Melbourne, come along anyway. Like, don't let a plane ticket get in the way. So many people are like, oh, but it's in Perth. It's like, yeah, I fly to Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane and Gold Coast every week almost. So come on, guys. Come over to lovely Perth in February. It's going to be great. So
I've got to extend on that plug. I just got to say one or two things to extend the plug.
Please do.
Most of the speakers, if not all, half the speakers or most, whatever, same deal, are traveling from interstate. That means that they are going to be having a really good time, which means that they're going to be getting into it, focusing. If you're traveling from interstate, that's some of the best training that you can do is when you travel from one place to another, because you are outside of everything. You can be focused. You can do all that other stuff. And then, as Kim said, if you're based in Perth, absolutely no excuse at all, because this is going to be the best sales and marketing conference of the entire year in Perth, as far as I know of.
Oh, it's definitely going to be. No one ever comes to Perth, so we've got really no competition. So we can easily say that.
Yeah, there you go. But it will be. So basically, if you're in Perth, sign up, because then you don't have to, pay for the flights to the other side of Australia. If you're in the other side of Australia, it's February? What a fantastic time to get out of your office.
Anyway.
Get, set aside the time and focus on your business. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much, guys. As always, make sure if you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe on whatever platform you're on. Let us know. Let us know what you thought of James. Make sure you go get a ticket as well. Don't miss out on that. And until next time, we'll see you then. I'm Kim. This is James. We've enjoyed you. Adios.